Hello everybody, this is the Jain speaking from Unity Gaming Studios. Today we are going to take a little break from making inventory systems and make object pooling systems. So object pooling systems are usually used for making your game more efficient. So the concept behind this is basically to avoid instantiating objects, because usually instantiating objects take up a lot of memory, which creates a lot of memory leakage, which kicks in the garbage collector, dropping your FPS, your frames of your game very low at certain points. So in general, it's very inefficient to instantiate objects. So the way to go about this is to actually instantiate objects when the game starts and keep on reusing them. Now you might not see a lot of difference in your game now, but once you start making a lot of particle systems, and just for example in a first person shooter or in an ARPG game, if you try to add in a lot of particle systems and blood effects and etc., your game might drop your frames very quickly at certain points. So it is very, very important to use object pooling. So as I said before, object pooling goes around by actually instantiating objects when we start the game and keep on reusing the objects again and again. So as you can see here, I've already made a scene. I just didn't want to waste time. I have a camera over here rotated downwards, and I have some cube, capsule, cube, and sphere. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use object pooling to make certain amount of instances of these three objects and keep on reusing them. So basically what I'm going to do is, so this is going to make it more efficient rather than always instantiating them. So just to add some more life to them, we're going to add a movement script to them, and we're just going to go to the cube and add a movement script to say movement, and it's going to be in C#. There we go. Whoops. I'm just going to take off all of these movements, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a public float speed, and on update we're going to say transform.translate new vector. So translate basically means moving in a certain direction. Or what we're going to actually do is we're going to say translate transform.forward. This basically means in the forward direction times our speed times time.delta time. Time.delta time just it just cancels out the drops in the FPS. It's just to make the speed equal at every moment. It's very important to have time.delta time and just time speed. Let's see how this is work. Let's check our speed to 5. And as you can see, the cube is just moving forward. Now this is just to give some life in the objects. You can add a movement script over here and add one over here. But what we want to do is I want to actually instantiate sphere. When I click it, I want to instantiate it and start moving it. So for now, as you can see, only one of this moves because the speed is 0 on the capsule and the sphere. So once I play this now, once I make it 5 on all, they all move. So now we're going to start by making the pooling system. So we're going to go to create empty, and we're going to call this empty a pool. And this is where we're going to create our pooling system. And we're going to go ahead and add component and add the pooling script. So we're going to say pool and add the pool and create a pool script in C#. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay. So now, as we know, we want to create 3 objects. We want to instantiate these 3 objects over here. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to make array of game objects. So array is basically a list of game objects, and then we're going to call them objects. And these are the objects that we want to pool. And second, we're going to create another array of list of int array. and say numbers. So this is basically going to say how many instances of these objects do you want to create. So we're going to go back, and here you can see number and objects. So what we can do is basically we can create a new folder in our assets folder, and we're gonna name it pooling objects. We're gonna go in pooling objects and drag our capsule, our cube, just to so that we can make a prefab out of them that we can reuse again and again. And sphere. Okay, there we go. And what we're gonna do is in our pool object, we're gonna change our size of our objects to 3 and drag them. Whoops. And drag them in there like that. So now this way, the script knows that it needs to pool these 3 objects. Now in the future, if you want to reduce or increase, you can just change this number to how many ever you want. Whoops, I was meant to do it by 10, but it's 3, and I need to drag it back. So it's pretty flexible, but at the same time you will need to change this as well. So you need to change the number to 3, and remember they have to be the same because this dictates how many instances of these you want to create. For example, for the capsule I want to create 10 instances, for the cube I want to create 5, and for the sphere I want to create 7, suppose. So when the game starts, it's going to have 10 capsules, 5 cubes, and 7 spheres. So let's go back. And now we're going to go to start because we want to instantiate them in the start. We're going to make a for loop. Or in fact, we're going to make a new method. And we're going to call it void instantiate. So this is going to instantiate all the pooling objects. Instantiate all the objects. Yeah. So we're going to make a for loop. And it's going to be objects count. It's going to be less than objects.length and count plus plus. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to instantiate. So basically instantiate. And then we're going to say we want to instantiate objects count. So now what we're doing is basically oopsie. So basically we are we're looping through this object array and instantiating each of those things. But what we want to do is we want to instantiate, suppose, the capsule 10 times, the cube 5 times, and the sphere 7 times. So we need a loop within a loop to do that. Go in a for loop. Int number in num, let's call it num is equal to 0. Num has to be less than number. Oh, sorry, I probably should zoom in. Number, and then put in count and num plus plus. So this way what it's doing is it's going through each of these objects and then checking how many times and looping through the number of times it has to instantiate the object, and then instantiates the objects. And hopefully this is going to work. Nope. And that's because we don't even call the instantiate method. I'll forget to call the method. And let's play. Whoops. And as you can see, it creates the capsule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now as you can see, it's very messy in the hierarchy. What we can do is we can parent them to pool. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead in the instantiate method and create a game object variable called temp. which stands for temporary, and we're gonna say temp is equal to no, well, that's weird, never mind. Temp is equal to instantiate object, and then we're gonna cast game object. This means that it's gonna convert what it returns into a game object and store it in temp. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna say temp.parent.transform.parent is equal to transform. So basically what it's saying is we're storing the object we instantiate in the temp, and we're making the temp's parent to this transform, which is basically the pool. And as you can see, it does not instantiate in the hierarchy, but it instantiates within the pool, making it way easier for us to manage pooling systems. So now what we want to do is, once we want to control on when we want to instantiate these objects. So we want, for example, as I said, when I click, maybe when I press the S button, I wanted to instantiate the sphere and maybe instantiate it for 5 seconds and then deactivate it again instead of destroying it. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to make a script for that. First of all, we're going to go to our pooling system over here. In fact, we're going to go back, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to our pooling objects and select all of them and deactivate them. Now I'll tell you why we're going to deactivate them. The reason is because we're going to activate them through our scripts when we click the S button. So now instead of creating them, we're activating them. So now we're using the objects that we created. It might not make a lot of sense now, but it will. We don't need this update. I'm going to say void activate. And what we're going to do is we're going to take in the ID. So through this ID, we're going to get to know which object are we going to activate. For example, if we say ID 1, we can actually delete these capsule and cube from the hierarchy. We don't need them anymore. We just need the pool and the camera. So if we say 0, it's gonna activate capsule. If we say 1, if the ID is 1, we're gonna activate cube. If the ID is 2, we're gonna activate the sphere. So this defines on what are we gonna activate. So the way we're gonna activate this is basically we're gonna loop through the instantiated objects and check the objects that are not in use and that are still in the pool, and that way we can activate those objects and use them. And that's how pooling system works, right? But to actually control these objects and to check which one is activated or not, we need to store them in some kind of variable. So first of all, we need to change system.collections in the top using system.collections to system.collections to generic. So this will basically let us use list. I'll just explain in a moment what we are doing now with list. We're going to have a public list of game objects, and we're going to have array of this, and we're going to call it pool. So basically what we're going to do is we're having this array of objects. So we are going to have in our first, just similar to this, we're going to have array, capsule, cube, and sphere. But instead of having one element, we're going to have a list of capsules, list of cubes, and list of spheres, because we're creating multiple capsules and multiple cubes and multiple spheres, instead of having one in each like we have here, because it's a pool and we're instantiating multiple instances, if that makes sense. So basically we're going to go over here, and then we're going to say pool. We're going to go just before the for statement, above the for statement. We're going to say pool is equal to, whoops, my mic just fell off. Pool is equal to new array, there we go. And we need to give it a length, which is going to be objects.length. So basically we're making a new pool and we're giving it a length, which is obviously going to be the length of the objects over here because it's the same length. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go over here. We're going to say pool, then we're going to put in square brackets, and we're going to put in count is equal to new list of game objects. So now we are creating a new list. So basically if we go back over here, what we're doing is we're creating this list over this array over here, and then this statement over here is creating a list within it. So it's creating a list of capsules, a list of cube, and a list of sphere. So multiple of them. Okay. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna add to the list. So we're gonna say pool count dot add. We're gonna add temp. So we're basically adding our instantiated objects to this variable so we can control them. And we don't have any errors. For now we can't see anything in the actual pool inspector because it is a list of game objects. But to actually so that's how we actually start by instantiating it. So now once we are done that, we're going to start trying to activate the stuff. So what we're going to do is once we get the ID, we need to loop through the list of capsules, list of whatever it is. It might be a list of capsule, list of cube, or list of sphere depending on this ID. So if our ID is supposed, let's say 1, so we're going to instantiate, we're going to activate the cube. We're going to go through the list of cubes and check which one is not activated yet, and then activate that one so we're essentially using it. So we're going to say, we're going to do a for loop. It has to be less than pool, and then we're going to say ID dot I don't know why it wouldn't give me that. Okay, not sure if that's right. It didn't give me the oh, never mind. It's small p pool dot length. So basically we're going through the list of cubes. Suppose if our ID is 1, and we're checking if pool whoops, this should be ID. So we're going through the list of cubes now. I'm gonna say ID dot get ID, and then you're gonna have another one, count dot active self. Yep, is not active self. I'll just explain this in a moment. So basically we're looping through the list of our cubes if our ID is 1, so it's saying pool ID, so which is the second it's gonna be a list over here, and then we're looping through that over here, as you can see, and we're checking if any one of them is not active, because we want to use the ones that are not in use, that are not active. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna return the game object over here. We're gonna say game object, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, just gonna copy paste this dot set active, and we're gonna activate this game object, and we're gonna return it so we can do stuff with it if we want to. We're gonna return it. If you have any errors, oops, it's not a method, it's a variable, so it's just active self. And by the way, we just return a null if this doesn't happen in the very end. If it's not able to get through the if statement, for now we'll return null. In the future we can add some error handlings. Okay, and for now it's not gonna do anything because it's just everything is still deactivated. But now what we can do is we can make a new script. We can say call it shoot. Let's call it shoot. And what I can do is I can have a variable public pool. So I'm taking the instance of the pool so I can use it, and I can say if inputs dot let's take a keyboard or get key down key code dot let's say cube, so let's say C. So basically it's checking if you're pressing the C button. What we're gonna do is we're gonna say pool.activate pool. Why doesn't it give me the option? Oh, sorry, this is meant to be public, by the way. So public basically makes it usable by other classes. You're gonna say pool.activate, and we're gonna activate 1 because that is the ID for cube. And we're gonna play, and hopefully it's gonna work. And it gives in a null pointer exception. Of course. Once we make our pool object, we actually need to drag our script over here so we can actually use it. And as you can see, when I press C, it actually uses, as you can see, it's cloning over here. And once we press C, once it has used all the clones, we can't instantiate anymore. And that's a demonstration of pooling systems. You're gonna, of course, do more of it now. For example, we have to destroy them, but instead of destroying them, we're gonna deactivate them. We're gonna else if gonna make one for capsule and a sphere as well. For sphere, it's gonna be S, and it was element 2. So we're gonna put in 2 because its ID is 2. So if let's put in 0. So to instantiate a capsule, we need to press A, S, C. Okay. So now, as you can see, I'm just instantiating different objects, and at some point we can't instantiate anymore because we have ran out of instances, because all of them are active and we can't reuse any of them because they're still in use. If I want to add a new object to our pool, it's very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to increase the size to 4 over here and 4 over here. And we're going to create an other, and we're going to create a cylinder, suppose. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a movement script over here as well, so it moves. And we're gonna deactivate this as all the other ones, and we're gonna drag it. We're gonna make a prefab and drag it in our pooling objects. We're gonna delete it from the hierarchy since we don't need it, and we're gonna add it to our element 3. And let's set this to 20. So we want to make 20 instances of this. Let's go to our shoot method and make a new else if statement saying once we press F, we want to activate element 3. And now we have a new pool. We have a new element in our pool. As you can see, we have sphere, capsule, I didn't drag it apparently. I need to drag the cylinder to element 3, not the sphere. And now, as you can see, we have cylinders in our pool. And when we press F, it creates cylinders now. So now it creates all cylinder, sphere, and capsules. So it's very flexible, just adding or deleting objects from our pools. So now what we want to do is we want to deactivate these objects. So now there are many ways to go about this. We can let the object itself to decide when to deactivate, or we can deactivate it over here. So basically what we can do is you can say public void deactivate. We're gonna give it the game object that we want to deactivate, because we need to know which exact object we actually want to deactivate. Deactivate object, and we're gonna go over here. We're gonna say deactivate object that set active and false. That as simple as that. Now you might argue that we don't need a separate method for that. Why don't we just do it over here? But it is usually good coding manner to do it like this, to have all functionality within one script. Now another way of deactivating objects is to give each object a set amount of time. For example, when I instantiate a cube, I want it to be alive for 5 seconds, and after 5 seconds it should automatically deactivate itself. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go to our cube, going to add a component, and we're going to call it pool member. So this way we know it's a pool member. And what we're going to do is we're going to let the cube decide when to deactivate itself. So the way we're going to go about this is going to go over here. You're going to have a public float lifetime. Give it a life. So life is basically the amount of seconds you want it to be alive for. So if it's 5, you're going to say 5 seconds, etc. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to change start to on enable. So this basically on enable, basically this method is called when we activate a method, activate an object. So when we activate, for example, a cube or a cylinder, Unity will automatically call this method. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, and I have a new variable over here, and we're going to say float time to die. So this basically, it sounds very grim, but this basically will, so the Unity game, whenever you create a game and play the game, it has a time clock, and we're going to use that clock to determine when we're going to deactivate it. So we're going to say an enable time to die is equal to our life plus the current time, time.time. So this basically dictates when we want to deactivate the object, basically. And in our update, we're always going to check if our current time has exceeded our time to die. So if it is our time to die or time to deactivate. Basically, if it is our time to die, so if we have to deactivate, what we're going to do is we're going to put in game object that set active. You're going to set active to false. So this way we gave it a set amount of time to actually deactivate itself. So we're going to go over here, we're going to go to the pooling objects, we're going to go to capsule, and we're going to add in pool member. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, we're going to add in 5. And then once we add in 5 in the capsule, 1 second. So to fire a capsule, we need, I don't even remember, 0, I guess, yeah. So there you go, it actually deactivates. 5 is way too long maybe. Let's put in 2 seconds. So I pressed A, and after 2 seconds it's gonna deactivate. And as you can see, it actually instantiates that same object since it activates itself. And when it deactivates and we press it again, it's gonna do that that capsule over there. And when I press it multiple times, it's gonna spawn from here. And when I press it multiple times again, it's gonna spawn the last one that was deactivated. So it checks which one. It loops through the whole capsule list and activates the first one. So now the problem here is we want to actually activate that particular capsule at the particular position. So what we can do is we can go back over to our pull script over here. No, 1 second. Our pull script, and what we can do is we can go to our we can go over here and we can create a new method. We create a brand new method, copy paste it just the same as activate, and then we're gonna add in a vector 3 position and quaternion rotation. So basically quaternion defines the rotation at what angle do we want to actually produce our capsule or our object. And what we can do is simply we can go over to here and we can say pool ID count, take this, so we're gonna take copy paste pool square bracket ID square bracket count dot position dot transform, because we want to set the position dot set. Then we're gonna say position is equal to position, which is this one over here. Let's see if we have any errors. Nope. And we have to even set the rotation, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take the transform and that rotation is equal to rotation. So basically we're first activating the object over here, and then we are setting the position and setting the rotation and returning that and we're going to go over here and we're going to say the pool.activate new vector, because now we need to use a new method. We're going to say I don't know what is the current position, 1.3 and 0.1. And quaternion.identity, this basically means 0, 0, 0. That means no rotation, and that's just giving the position over here. So we're gonna go over here and set it. Also need to remember to put in the F over there, the float, to represent it's a float, or else it's gonna give an error since it doesn't accept double but only accepts float in vectors. So you're gonna go back over here. I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna press A. It instantiates on the normal position, but when it deactivates and I press A again, it instantiates back into that position, because in the shoot method I've always instantiated at this point. Now when you program and use particle effects, etc., you can your program can decide where to actually instantiate them rather than you hard coding it, or it just depends on the kind of game you're making, in an ARPG or first person shooter or whatever it is. So if I press A, as you can see, all of them are actually instantiating over here, and as you can see, yep, that's it. And now we're gonna do some error handling. So first, error handling is gonna be with what if you ran out of objects and your user or your program is asking you to instantiate more objects. In that case, what you will need to do is the pool will need to instantiate a new object during runtime, which is a little inefficient, but it has to be done so that the game can keep on going on. But we can store that new instantiated object in the pool itself, so that next time the probability of that happening will get lower. So I'll tell you what I'm talking about. iTunes is just going crazy. So we're going to go over here and we're going to say we're going to go to activate, and we're going to say if so basically if it finds a active self which is not active, it's going to return. So it's going to return, but if it doesn't, it's going to go over here. So if it hasn't found any active if it hasn't found any inactive objects, it's going to come over here, and here you're going to say pool id dot add, and we're going to instantiate, because we want to instantiate a new object. And what we're going to instantiate is you're going to instantiate objects ID. So we are instantiating an object's ID. So basically, if we ran out of spheres, if we call the element if we call the element 2 and we ran out of spheres, it's gonna instantiate a new element 2. And you have to cast game object on this because it returns it as an object but not game object. And then we're gonna set the transform and position of that as well. We're gonna say pool ID that do we have a last index of find last, that should work. Dot transform. So this is basically after adding, we're getting the last element that we added and setting its position to the position over here. And the same with transform we're gonna do. We're just gonna copy paste this over here. Pool.id.find last .transform.rotation is equal to rotation. And then we're gonna return pool id.find last. Okay. I'm just thinking if you're missing out anything. Pool id.count. Okay, that should be fine. So apparently find last doesn't work because it doesn't find the last instance of it. What does find the last instance? Dot oh, what you can do is you can say pool id pool.count dot length -1. I hope it's a list. Yeah, it's a list. It works. So instead of doing a find last square bracket, we're gonna whoops. So basically we are getting the last index and then we're changing its position and rotation over here. And the same thing over here. And hopefully this will work. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set the capsule, the number of capsules to 1. So basically we're gonna try to instantiate more than one capsule at a time. So as you can see, we definitely have an error over here. One second, guys. Guys, we made a silly mistake over here. We need to go over here and say pool square bracket ID, because we want to get the last index of pool ID, because we added to the list. So basically what's happening is we're gonna have lists of cylinders, list of sphere, list of cube, and what we did is we added one at the end of the list, and we're trying to get that last index from the list, and that's what we're trying to do over here. That is why we're saying pool ID. So if the ID is 1, it's gonna say it's referring to the cubes list, and we're trying to get the last value of it. We're gonna go back. Wow, those are even more errors. Dot count, and sorry, it's not length dot, it's pool ID dot count. So I hope you guys can see the code just clearly, so you guys can look through it. That should work. Yay. And as you can see, when we're not having enough capsules, it generates more, and at some point it's gonna stop generating since we have enough capsules. So as you can see, it stopped generating capsules since it has enough capsules to actually generate every time. So yep. One thing we need to do is we need to set its transform to the parent. We need to set the parent of this transform. So we're gonna go back, copy this whole thing again. Dot parent is equal to this dot transform. So we're setting its parent. And we have to do the same thing over here as well. But the only difference is we're just going to copy paste this line over here. These two lines. So it's going to instantiate the object and sets the parent, and returns the object. And so now we made a pooling system. It actually also handles situations where you don't have enough objects in the pool and add it to the pool. Okay guys, that's it for today. We learned how to completely make a pooling system that we can use in our games to make our games much more efficient. And that's it guys. If you like my tutorial, please subscribe, rate, like the video. This has been a very long video, like 40 minutes. And if you guys can check out the new game development video I made. So I'm just basically making a new game. You can check that out. And if you guys really want to support me, you can donate to me, so that I can use that money to develop the game I'm currently making. And that is only, of course, if you like my game or if you like my tutorials and you want to support me. So to donate for the game that I am currently working on, you can go to the description, and annotation will be given on the screen. And thank you guys. Good luck, and see you next time.